different sides of us come out, or we are a different person depending who we're with. Which is always interesting to me. Now, if you ask everybody in your life, they've all seen a little bit of a different part of us, but it's all us.
Yeah.
So it starts with grace. I think it starts with just giving yourself the grace that you would give to somebody that you love, like you should love yourself.
Hello, welcome back to the F.E.E.L podcast today. I'm your host, Melissa Crook. I've got a new friend here with me today, Mary Rothwell. Mary and I met via our good friends at Podmatch, and I got to be a guest on her brand new podcast, which is going to be a few months older by the time this drops, but still pretty new out in the world. And I was so honored, and we clicked right away. And she's having the conversations just like we are, that we all need to be having. And I'm excited to have her as part of this group of women that are doing this, because it takes all of us. You know, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to change narratives and open spaces and create places for women to be safe and talk about the things that are impacting them, so we can provide resources and create communities. And Mary is a very important part of that. And so I'm so happy to know her. She describes herself as empowering, genuine and authentic, practical and grounded, a sense of humor. She's nature focused. She's creative. She's connected. She's dynamic and introspective. She has this part of her, she's a therapist, and she's got a part of this that's connected in a way to the nature that we're going to talk about later, because I think it's one of the most fascinating things I've ever heard. But on that note, Mary Rothwell, welcome to the F.E.E.L podcast.
Thank you, Melissa. It's very exciting to be here and to see you again.
You too. I'm excited for this conversation. So starting off, how to prioritize self-care in your life and what that looks like for you. Talk to me about your journey with that, because in the line of work you're doing, it would be really easy to take on all the emotions of everybody. You know, this is a kind of work that requires emotional labor. So having these practices in place for yourself, I would think, has to be an important part, but it's also not something that we are naturally drawn to as a little girl. So it's usually something we have to figure out along the way. So talk to me about your journey with that.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been in mental health as a practitioner since my 20s, and I started working in public school, and then I segued to college, the college population. And a lot of that work is very, it can be very crisis focused. So it's fast paced. I loved it, but I think I had to learn that skill of self-care because I do naturally have a lot of energy, but there would be times where I would wake up and for work and be like, I don't want to go today. And I think it took getting older to realize that doesn't mean there's something wrong with me. That just means that I needed to rest. And so I think what I've learned along the way, now I work for myself now, but when I didn't, when I would be in that cycle of like the school cycle, you know, on the semesters, which I love that rhythm. But every time the school year started, I would go through my calendar and I would put my vacation days in months ahead of time. And I would have colleagues that would say, I can't get a day off. I can't. And I said, you have to plan ahead. Like I learned, I just need to build those things in. And that was sort of my first step into that world. But as you kind of alluded, I love nature. And I think I was a master gardener for 15 years. So it's one of my, just being in nature, being a gardener, my favorite things. And what I have seen through all my decades of doing that is how nature has a rhythm. And everything has to rest, right? And I think especially as women, sometimes we think, I just have to push through this next thing. Or we can get that narrative that if you don't show up for everyone, then you are not doing what you're supposed to do. Or if you take a break, you're lazy, you know, all of those narratives. But I think if we look at nature always rests. I mean, looking at plants, and that was kind of where I sort of really connected to that. And you know, for my own self, accepted that everything does it. You know, we think about bears hibernating. We don't say they're lazy because they do
Oh.
that.
Yeah.
So some of the most beautiful plants go dormant because they have to. They get their energy by doing that. So I think I started to think in terms of that how does a plant handle a situation if, it gets sick, because plants get sick too. It actually takes a rest. It shuts down some of its functions so it can get better. And really, plants are communities. They also rely on each other. So I think that was another part of it, that how do I stay connected to the important people and really build kind of that network. So it's really, I think there's two things. I think self-care for me, it's of course responsive, when we have a time where we feel run down. But I think the most important part is more of a wellness kind of idea that, we need to tend to ourselves before we're not okay. And, do our movement, eat well, all of those things. That's become so much a part of just my plan for the week. What am I going to eat? How am I going to eat well? How am I going to find time to I don't like the word exercise. I think it feels pressury.
Yeah.
So I'd say, how am I going to get my movement in, my yoga, like those kinds of things. So it's really evolved, I think, as I've gotten older and started to recognize that we are just like every other part of nature, that we have a cycle and there will be times when we need to rest and times when we can bloom.
Yeah. I love that connection you made. Because something that comes to mind, and some people use this as an example, is when you're wintering. Winter for the plants, for the trees, for so many animals, is a time to rest, a time to stay a little closer in, a little more cozy, a little less engaged, to refill and rejuvenate. I think that's something that we miss out on sometimes. So I love that analogy. I love that. Those living things need that time. We're living things. So it only makes sense that we would need that time as well. Also, I love how you get ahead of yourself and put that time in your calendar. That is I tell people all the time, I'm like, look at your calendar and you will put the things in your calendar that you value. And that has to start with you, because there's always going to be something else to do. There's always going to be someone else that wants your time. But if you want to show up healthy, well, filled, not waking up like, oh my gosh, I have to go to, sometimes my husband will wake up and I know when he's getting burnout, needs some time. He's like, I don't want to go to work today. And he loves his job. He loves his job. He loves his work. I'm like, that, I don't have to say anything. You know what that clue is. And, and it's just that, that reminder that even when we're doing things we love, we still need to take time to fill our cup. So get it in the calendar, but remember, because another word, you and I talked about this, I think, when I recorded with you, is we got to reframe or even get rid of the word lazy. I think it's such a dangerous word and is used really in a weaponized way. It is not lazy to rest. It is not lazy to take a step back. It is not lazy to not have your calendar filled all the time. We all have to have space to just be. And so I think that, remembering that too and changing the narrative on that. So good. Thank you so much for that. And it really, goes nicely into confidently setting boundaries by putting that time in your calendar, by recognizing the plant cycle. You've done that. And so talk to me about that journey for you.
Yeah. So I think that's another thing. And I'll talk professionally. And there's a term, invisible labor, and that's really a term that it's women that do the invisible labor, not only at home, but at work. So to give, a little background of that, it's basically all the things that happen behind the scenes to keep things going. So if we think about invisible labor at work, women tend to do the things that are connecting. So they'll buy the birthday cards, they'll plan the staff meetings with the food, doing all the things, checking in on somebody if they're doing a project. And a lot of times doing things that aren't going to get them ahead at work as far as promotions and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, in my field, that wasn't really relevant, but I think I used a lot of time in things that didn't necessarily support me. They were supporting the people around me.
Yeah.
So I would be very quick to say, I'll help with that, knowing that, okay, that's going to mean I'm going to have to do my own responsibilities in a different way to get them done.
Sure.
So it's funny because we so often say, I need to learn to say no. We say that all the time, but I think it's really, it's saying no, but I think it's also being able to recognize that when we need to set a boundary, we feel it in our body. That we feel a at least I do. I feel a resistance.
Me too.
Even at, sometimes the word yes is coming out of my mouth and my body's saying no. And I didn't, and there's still times I don't listen, but I think often we say yes because we're worried about what someone else is going to think.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So yeah, I think, and I can go back too, and I'm going to use my plant analogy again, because I think it's really a great frame that, sometimes in order for a plant to thrive, it needs to be cut back. So, we trim plants to make them, we call it bush out, to make it thrive and be vibrant. And I think sometimes in our lives, we have to look at situations where it's not serving us.
Yeah.
And, sometimes that's a relationship. I've had situations where I realize I've known someone for a long time, or they've been important for a long time, and I've given in a way they're not giving. And so I just have to decide, and it doesn't even need to be something you proclaim. I don't think you need to walk into it. You don't need to say, I'm setting a boundary.
Right. Yeah.
I
Very rarely do we do that when we're having the actual conversation. Yeah.
No, it's an internal decision. And I think being able to do it, like, we're not punishing somebody. We're not trying to get them to do what we want them to do. Sometimes I think we can get confused when we think about a boundary, but it really truly is just something where you say, this isn't serving me. And I don't have the energy to invest in that direction anymore. And then sort of just be congruent with that decision that you've made. But it is hard. I mean, I think boundaries move all the time.
They do. And we have to be aware of that. Like, examine where if something starts feeling a little off kilter, something might need to be adjusted there. But I'm so, boundaries are about our behavior, not someone else's, and making sure we, if, this is not something I'm going to choose to continue to engage in. If you still want to do it, great. I'm not telling you not to. Just I'm not going to continue to participate or engage. I mean, and I think making it about our behavior and not someone else's is such a key component, because that's what our responsibility is. We're not responsible for other people, but we are responsible for ourselves, and the decisions we make, and communicating that in that way is so important too. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think, and I think even when you're talking about somebody else, and you realize you're giving more to the relationship, sometimes when you do sort of like lean back a little bit, and it doesn't mean you don't care about the person. This isn't necessarily a situation where you're saying, I don't want that person in my life, although it might be, but it's an uneven investment.
Yeah.
So I think when you can lean away a little bit, sometimes that adjusts the equilibrium.
Yeah.
But it's very freeing. It's freeing, I think. And I think, when you talked on my podcast, you stated the whole boundaries thing very beautifully. And I think it really is about what you need and what you want for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think remembering that. But I think the key is listening to your body, because if your stomach clenches or you tense up, listen to that, because that's your body saying, I don't think we want to do this.
Yeah. Your nervous system is going to let you know right away. For me, my chest tightens up. I start everything up, like everything from here up. It's just, and I start, and I was like, ooh, yeah, that's a clue. And I spent so many years disassociated from it that when I started noticing it, I was like, oh, wow, it's just really been there with me all the time. I was just choosing to ignore it. But honoring that, listening to that is such an important part of your health and your care. You said something so important to that invisible work. Dr. Doreen McCauley and Dr. Janelle Wells are on with me in July. They've got a book they've written about the invisible work. I mean, it's literally called The Invisible Work. And it's about that phenomenon that we've all known about for ages, but we've never talked about it. And it is such an important piece because it generally falls on women and underserved populations. And it's that person who's always planning the Friday, party once a month. It's the person who's always doing the birthday parties for the office. It's the person who's always cleaning up after the lunch. And it's not part of their job description. And so many times it's just assumed they want to do it. It's assumed they've chosen that. It's no one necessarily stops to even say thank you, or, and sometimes it's as simple as say, gosh, I've noticed you do that a lot. I really appreciate that. Please let me know if you'd like help, or please let me know if that's something that you'd like to trade off. I mean, just that simple acknowledgement can mean the world when someone's been continually doing that. Yeah. So I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, Melissa, it's when we are in our personal relationships, I think it happens a lot more. It happens a lot in families and marriages. And I think we don't even know it until I think we know it. Like we just fall into that role. And, I always joke that when I say I'm going to get ready for bed, that means I'm going to get the coffee maker ready. I'm going to feed the cats. I'm going to clean the litter boxes. I'm going to put I have this list of stuff. Yeah. And I think one of the interesting things was because I'm kind of newly married again, and it's really a good, it's a very good balance, and we communicate well. But I realized at one point I was taking on the responsibility of dinner, and I love to cook, but I don't love to be expected to cook. But when I brought this up, it was like, well, I don't expect that, and so I think that's a clue because sometimes it's easy to say, oh, the man doesn't blank. But I think we maybe don't always give them a chance to step in. Or I know for me, it's like, it's easier to do it myself. It's going to be done the way I want it. But I think when we think about those boundaries, sometimes I think you have to tolerate maybe the dishwasher being loaded differently than we would want to have somebody share some of those tasks. So I think that's part of boundaries too. It's saying, I'm not sure I want to be the one in charge of this. How can we share that responsibility?
Such a great example. And we will go around with a martyr complex and we're like, how is my body language not being noticed here? How is my irritability and my tone not being noticed here? People are not mind readers. If we don't want to be doing something it is our responsibility to communicate that. It is not their responsibility to try and read all of that all the time. Communication is kind. And I love the dishwasher example because this is an exact discussion my husband and I had. We load the dishwasher very differently. We have a very different way of going about that. And we each think the other's way, our way is right. I had to release that a few years ago. It really came out during the pandemic. We were all working at home and we had 2 of our 3 daughters home with us and my husband and I, and we were all 3 of the 4 of us were working from home. The one did have a job outside of the house that was allowed to happen in a very unique way. But for the most part, we were all there together. And so, we were doing, since it was the 4 of us and the other 2 had been in college. So we hadn't had everybody not everybody, our oldest wasn't there, but most of us back in the house together for a couple of years. So this was kind of like, okay, how are we going to, we're all here. We're all cooking all the meals all the time. How are we going to do this? And so my husband got, really re-engaged with a lot of these things. And he likes to cook more than I do. So that's always been a part of our narrative. But I just had to really release the way he loaded the dishwasher, and he had to release the way I did. And we just had to let it just walk away. Like, instead of being like, ooh, you're saying something, just walk away. Oh my gosh. And when I learned, I'm like, it's fine. It's fine. And, that's a big part.
Yeah. Well, and I just say to him, you load the dishwasher like a rabid hyena, but that's okay. If it gets clean, then I'm like, there's a right way to do this. And you line the plates up and you line the plastic lids up. But, I know that I'm a little anal with that. But it's to me, it's like a rabid hyena just came in and was like tossing stuff in there. But so we laugh about it because really we do have to decide we're either going to hang on to it and feel resentful, or we're just going to like look at the bigger picture and, it's a partner. We're not going to do things the way they think we should and vice versa. And does it get done at the end of the day and then just go on to something else? So
I love that rabbit hyena. That's so funny because my husband is like, you put way too much in there. I'm like, you don't put enough, and then we have to run it more. He's also the splashiest person I've ever seen load a dishwasher. There's like water everywhere on the floor, around, like he's rinsing. I'm like, we're not surfing. We're loading the dishwasher. And so, I remember one of my daughters was like, Mom, just walk away. Just walk away. Yeah. And let him do it. And it gets done and it's fine and it's good.
Yeah.
But the laughing about it is such a key component of it. And I probably do feel it too full because I don't like doing dishes. And so I'm like, how many can we get in there so there's nothing in the sink? So I own that. That's probably true. Anyway, oh my gosh. Thank you so much for that. This is such an important component of what your work. It's literally what you do and helping people do this. But I'm sure you had to go on your own journey with this, is those connections between our mental, emotional, physical health. I mean, you're literally helping people navigate that very space, but then also being able to do that yourself. Talk to me about your journey with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And this was a journey. And, I think what we go through in life, it teaches us what we need to know. And if we don't pay attention, the lesson gets a little harder each time.
Sure.
But I think this idea of we're a 360-degree person being, it's not that our mental health is separate from physical health. And I think this took a while for it to dawn on me, but I used to suffer with terrible migraines. And it really wasn't until recently when I started an integrative nutrition course that I didn't realize that's an autoimmune condition, that it's about everything else in our body. It's about our hormones. It's about our gut. It's about all those things. And so I never would have thought changing what I eat, how I manage stress. It's a whole thing, really looking at when we don't feel well, even when we don't feel well mentally, that can have to do with our gut and our diet, because it's the vagus nerve is what helps us to calm down. That runs from our gut to our brain. It tells our brain what's happening. Yeah. So I think the importance of knowing that we can't tend to one thing and think it's separate from everything else. So, sometimes I used to say, like, I love chocolate cupcakes. So I would say, oh, I earned this cupcake. And I think we talk that way about food a lot. But now I realize if I have a chocolate cupcake too often, it's not even about weight anymore. I mean, well, it is, but it's also about, I know how it's going to make me feel. Yeah. And sluggish, brain fog. And sleep has become, it is one of the most important things. And I think that changes a lot for us as women when we hit perimenopause, right?
Absolutely.
Everything shifts. Yep. And I actually teach an online course with group coaching called Restored. That's my sleep course because it grew out of my struggles. It was years till I realized. So now it is this, for me, recognizing all of this, I really have to think and plan just like I do with everything else. So if we go out to dinner, my husband and I enjoy craft beer. Well, I never drank a lot, but my body doesn't tolerate it anymore. So it's this planning. It's that whole, it's the joke about the old people eating at 4:30. So, part of that is because I want to enjoy a drink. And if I have it too close to bed, it really messes up sleep.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's thinking about us as a whole person. So if we're having a day where we're feeling kind of blah, it might really be because of what we ate 24 hours before that.
Yeah.
Or it might be that we had something that triggered a memory that we didn't even recognize was connected to something that was traumatic. So I really, for me now, because I have that sort of reflective, introspective part to me, when I'm feeling off, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, whatever, spiritual, whatever it is, I sort of take stock of the whole picture. And that's how I work with my clients, because women especially are so intuitively, sometimes our illness isn't intuitive. It's a physical manifestation of what we've carried for so long. So I think that, again, my work with clients and my own situation, I think they have impacted each other. I think, we all come to, I think, the work we do because of our experiences. So I prioritize my sleep, and that for a while, I think I felt like those jokes, it was a little cringy. Like, I really want to go to bed at like 8:30. And now I'm like, I can't wait to go to bed at 8:30. You just have to own it, because there are beautiful things about this being this age too.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, adjusting and kind of keeping that eye on all of the things and trying to keep them balanced is the hard part.
Yeah. Yeah. But that awareness helps you to keep them balanced. But I'm curious because you mentioned, all these systems are connected, and you mentioned the gut. We've really, I feel like over the last probably 10-ish years, started talking more publicly about the gut mind connection. Have you seen a shift in that too, in terms of how you were trained versus what you know now?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's a lot. I was trained 35 years ago, Melissa. So it really almost was like you do therapy from the neck up. And some of it, the somatic stuff, it's funny because a lot of the things that we do now have been done for thousands of years. Things like tapping, right? And, a lot of the somatic therapies, the body therapies, that's what people did with ancient medicine. And now we think we're real cool but a lot of the brain gut health stuff has been known for hundreds of years. It was just thought of in different ways. But that's things like they're recognizing 95% of serotonin is made in our gut.
Wow.
And we think of serotonin like that's just in your brain, but our gut is informing our emotions. It's informing how well we think. So I think it's become undeniable, but it's still not mainstream. And I think that's what can be challenging.
Yeah. Because it's such an important piece of it. I really didn't understand it probably. Well, I was forced to. I was starting to have these things happening in my body. When I was 45, that I didn't really have a choice but to take a look at the connections and I was like, oh, wow. So, those cortisol levels, those dopamine levels, those serotonin levels, and in my estrogen and the anxiety and my A1C levels and, all this stuff and all the interconnectedness. So how I fuel my body, how I move my body when I do those things, there was a shift. It was like, I had to really oh, wow. Okay. So I think that there's a lot of power in that too. And it's undeniable. I am a classic example. You've heard my story when I was on your podcast, but I'm a classic example of the physical manifestations. I ended up in the ER twice, in when I would, the fall of 2019 for things that I've been carrying around emotionally and trauma-wise, mentally for years. And there was actual physical manifestations. My body just was like, we can't carry all this anymore. Ding, 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 ding. And, and I think that's such an important piece too, seeing those as clues instead of seeing it as our body. Oh, my body's failing. Oh, my body's working against me. No, your body's crying out for help. And she's making shifts. So she wants to show up for you the best she can, but she needs you to participate in that and listen to her.
Yeah. Well, and you brought up a great part of all of this is hormones. Our bodies are so complex, and we have just knowing about the kidneys, just one part blew me away. But when we talk about hormones, I think we think about estrogen, progesterone, but melatonin and cortisol are hormones also. So one of the things that our modern society has done is it's given us too much light. So going back to nature again, a lot of flowers close up as the sun goes down. We don't close up because we keep looking at a screen, or we want to keep producing or, pushing it. And then we think we should be able to fall into bed and go to sleep. And we don't work that way. So one of the best things that we can do is try to see the sun first thing and really let ourselves wind down for 2 hours before bed. And that starts to regulate that cortisol. So because that comes up in the morning and it should go down at night, and vice versa with melatonin. And I think if we're waking up in the middle of the night, which I still do sometimes, not as much as because I've learned what to do, but I think that cortisol in the middle of the night when we're like racing thoughts and pounding, that's our cortisol. And we can regulate that. It is doable, but we're swimming upstream at first because that's not how our society is built right now.
Oh, for 1,000% sure. The capitalistic society is not set up to shut down at sundown. And it just isn't set up that way. And you do need that wind down time. I mean, my husband was actually, I have to give credit to him first because he gets up very early in the morning. He's a morning person. I never have been. I get up early enough, but not as early as I used to. I get up at like 6:45. I used to have to get up at 5 or 5:30. He's up with and before the birds. And he's good with that. He's also ready to, by 7:30, 8 o'clock. I mean, we're getting, I'm recording this at the beginning, when it's getting close to summer. So it's obviously light longer, but we turn off all the lights by like 8 o'clock. The lights are off in the house. And even if it's still daylight outside, we got the natural light coming in, but the lights are turned off. And then we're closing the blinds and just really preparing our bodies for settling down. And I used to not need the wind down. I need the wind down now. I used to go so hard that I would just collapse in the bed and fall asleep. That's not how my body works anymore, And also too, I will tell you, when that was happening, there wasn't the screen activity that there is now. When I was able to collapse into bed like that was 15, 20 years ago before. There were phones, but they weren't smartphones. It wasn't this on everything all the time scenario. And so, absolutely. That all plays a role, but seeing those systems and how they're all connected and addressing them collectively and not siphoning them out is such an important part of this. So thank you so much for all of your information on that. So helpful. All right. How we can support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically. Your new podcast, No Shrinking Violets, is this 2.0. I mean, this is really, how you show up for this. And it's such great content. It's such important conversations. It's tied so succinctly with what we do here. And so talk to me about what it was that made you decide it was time to open this chapter.
Yeah. Well, again, partly my own experiences, but a lot of my career was spent working with college students. And I think really the impetus was when I would see over and over my college, and I'll call them girls, my college girls, putting themselves in situations where they stayed small. And it would be things like, a lot of it was intimate situations. They would be in a situation where things were getting physical. And I can't tell you, I bet you once a week, I would have one of my girls tell me, well, I just went along with it. I didn't really want to, but it was easier. And, I couldn't be appalled in that moment.
Sure.
But this accumulation of where are we getting this message that we just need to go along with something because it's, quote, easier. So that really, I think, was probably the biggest seed. And, I think for me, when as a therapist, you don't talk about yourself a lot. That's not your role.
Right.
And so I think for me, it was challenging to step into this space because on a podcast, people just learn about you. It's not that you put things out, but even like now, my clients wouldn't know that my husband and I don't load the dishwasher the same way. It's even those little things where you don't talk about that. It's a different sort of relationship. So I think for me, it was kind of, I think part of me chose that career for a reason. It's very safe to not share, right? It's very safe to be able to be there and support somebody else without allowing them to support you. So first of all, therapy is beautiful. I think I'm humbled to be able to be that for people. But I think it also can lend to sort of this feeling of like, I always have to know how to take care of myself. And I'll be the first to tell you, I've definitely seen therapists, and all the therapists that I know that are the best have had therapists. So it's a really powerful thing. But I wanted women to recognize that if you stand up, and I talk about mountain pose, like yoga pose, if you stand up with your shoulders back and down and you take up your space, you're not the B word. You're not crazy. You're not, again, I'll say what you said about me. Your podcast is about layers. All of those layers, even if some of them make us feel a little bit cringy, that's okay. Like, they're part of who we are. Yeah. And I wanted people to feel empowered by the stories. And, one of the things in my work, I use a positive psychology frame. And basically what that means is when we are growing up, we do what we have to do to survive. Yeah. And that could mean that you are the child who is very compliant and you want to keep the peace. It could mean that you're the one that acts out. But whatever happened, you were trying to get through a situation that was really hard. And people end up in therapy or coaching or the doctor's office because they try to keep doing the thing that worked when they were younger. And it doesn't work anymore. So I think also empowering women, especially, to be able to look at it and say, just because you always did that doesn't mean you always have to do that. Yeah. Yeah. You can expand into a space. And that goes back to nature again. I have this concept of essential nature, that we are all wired a certain way and we all are formed by our environment, nature and nurture. And so being able to get back to that, because as kids, we know what we need. Pretty much. We know what we like. We know what we hate. And then women are socialized to be nice and smile. And so I think being able to re-access that inner knowing is so powerful. And that's a lot of what I think the message, I do a lot of things across the board about wellness and all kinds of things, but at the base of that is really, how do you stand in your space, be well, and just, kind of live the life that makes you feel fulfilled?
Yeah. Yeah. So good. I love the mountain pose picture I love that visual. Also, it's that piece of, we don't need to apologize for taking up space and being seen, known, and heard, and getting rid of that idea not to be difficult or not to be bitchy or whatever. No. You saying no to something that doesn't feel authentic and healthy and well to you, no matter where it is, whether it's in the bedroom or the boardroom or anywhere in between, that is you being honoring to you. And one of the first things I also, in a different way, but I also work with college students and primarily women. And one of the first things I always tell them is like, don't ever enter a room leading with, I'm sorry. You walk into a room, may I have some of your time? I need a moment. If it doesn't work now, can we schedule something later? But never with, oh, I'm so sorry. Can I have a moment of your time? Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't, what? No. You lead with a question. And Maria Mai, who I was just on with us a couple weeks ago, had a great way to reframe it. And she said that instead of saying, if she's late for something, thank you so much for being patient. I appreciate you waiting for me. That is like a whole different framework of the way you say something to someone so that like we don't have to apologize for having needs, wants, desires, hopes, and wishing to be authentic to ourselves. So getting rid of that, making everything convenient for everybody else at a cost to us, we have to get rid of that idea that that's the way we're supposed to show up in the world.
Yeah, we can't be perfect. And I think we're quick to feel shame because we are shamed. I think that's been part of the socialization.
Exactly.
That, don't calm down. You're hysterical. And men are allowed to be angry. Women aren't allowed to be angry. It's sort of those different scripts.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that idea of the being aware of saying sorry, because you can use a statement instead.
Exactly.
Like you said, thanks for waiting, or I need a minute of your time. Is this convenient right now? But we really have to work, I think, to change some of that sort of self-deprecating, reducing ourselves. We really have to practice. And I like starting with that mountain pose. Stand in that space. Start with your body, and that can help your mind follow.
Yeah. It reminds me of a scene from Ted Lasso. And it's funny. And the funny part about this is so classic Ted Lasso too. It's actually the main character woman in there showing the man, Nick, who's very insecure young assistant coach. She's actually the one that does the lion pose and is showing him how to show up confidently in a room. And when she does that, I'm like, oh, I love that they switched the narrative on this. It's her showing him how to show up in the mountain pose and how, she looks so strong and determined when she does it. And but she talked about it in the manner of before she would go, because he had said to her, you always seem so confident. He's like, oh, are you kidding me? Every time I go into a boardroom where I know it's going to be all men, because I'm the only woman owner of a sports team anywhere, I will go in the bathroom and do this pose and get myself ready to walk in with the kind of posture and the kind of aura of confidence that I know I'm going to need every ounce of when I walk in that room. And it changes completely the way you received and viewed. And because you're right there, I talk about this all the time. I go into it in great detail in my online course about the example of anger is not the problem. The problem around anger is that we stuff it, that we don't leave room to process it, that we are embarrassed by it, shamed by it. Anger's a clue. It's letting us know something's happening here. And we have just as much a right to it as men do. The problem is the socialization around it. When a man demands something, we say he's strong and determined and a force. And, so it's also changing those words and narratives, but we got to do it together as a collective. That's why I'm, so passionate about what we do, you and I do, and welcoming all the women we can get going into this conversation, because it's going to take all of us to shift these narratives and pour into these, these younger generations and help them to know no apologizing for taking up space. You have every right to be in that room. You have every right to advocate for yourself, and you will have to advocate for yourself to change these narratives.
Yeah. And to support each other, for women to support each other.
Not the competition.
Exactly. Yeah. Because we're set up for that too. So I think we tend to say that stuff about other women too.
Yeah.
But I think at the core, that's not what we really want. So I think, changing that dynamic too is really important.
Absolutely. No more scarcity mindset. There's room for all of us. Yeah. And we're feeding into the old tired narrative when we let that rule the day. And it's like, no, we're discarding that. I give examples like, listen, if you're in a room with another woman and you've got a few deposits in the bank and you've been there a while and you've got some experience, if someone interrupts her, excuse me, George, I don't think Shelley was finished yet. Let's listen to what she has to say first. Those little decisions that you make in a day, instead of seeing her, oh, we're going to keep her small so I can continue to rise up the ladder. No, make more room on that ladder, because when you rise up and show what can be done, bring her along with you and create a community that way. So we could talk about this for forever, but so good. Thank you so much for all of that. So good. I love it. All right. And this really goes nicely into the importance of setting and coming back to your why and your values in what you do. Your work is very succinctly aligned from this. I know that from talking to you. So talk to me about that journey and getting there and understanding that connection.
Yeah. Yeah, I was always drawn, even as a kid. I knew that whatever I did with my life, I wanted to impact people. I wanted to impact the world. And I know it sounds corny even to my ears right now, but that's always been my motivator.
Sure.
And, you don't get rich in college mental health. You don't get rich as a therapist. Like these aren't things that you choose because you want to pad your bank account. So, but it never worried me. And, each time I changed jobs, believe it or not, I took pretty significant pay cuts. But to me, it was growing kind of the impact that I could have or working with a different population. And, that really has been not a problem. I think there are people that they worry so much about the money, and I get that. But I think if you feel grounded and sure in your why, I think it makes those choices, it drives those choices. And so now, I retired officially from Penn State in 2022, and that was not something that I would have chosen to do. There was a situation that happened with personnel change that someone who would end up having a big impact on my ability to not only work well, but to work in a healthy environment. And I just had to make the choice to leave something that I loved. And it really, it took the foundation out from under me. It leveled me. And, because that was really, I just loved the environment. I loved college students. So I had to sort of reinvent, what am I going to do now? And, you can relate to this, I'm sure, but building something like we're building now with all the parts and the podcast and the workshops and all of those things, it's freaking hard. But I think that thread runs through it, that when I get a comment, like I just got an email today from somebody that listened to my most recent podcast episode saying, thank you so much for this, because I'm going to be going to my doctor next week, and it helped me to have the language that I need to advocate for myself. Or somebody said to me, I had a hard thing that I needed to do, and I just kept thinking, no shrinking violets, which is the name of my podcast.
Yeah.
And those little things are just, it's kind of like, when the light, the candle starts to sputter, and then all of a sudden it gets a breath of fresh air and the flame comes up. That's what those things are like. So really, I have always wanted to leave an impact on people, but through their actions. I don't change my clients. I facilitate.
Yeah, you empower them.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want somebody's day to be better because it intersected with mine. And I know that does sound so corny. And maybe, I don't know, sometimes maybe there's a little privilege in that, but I feel like that's always been my why. And even with making a garden, I want that space to be nurturing to, the bees and the butterflies and all of those things, changing whatever terrain I'm in. Just to create something that's more hospitable and nurturing for whatever needs that.
I love that. I love how you tied those in and how those align with, and going back to knowing early on, whatever I do, this is going to be tied to it. And that's what allows you to show up each day fulfilled, ready to give, in touch with yourself, doing what you need to do to fill yourself so you can show up the way you want to in those spaces. That's such a key component. It's so funny you mentioned that, because I had this epiphany a little while back. I was creating this thing that I wanted to release and put out into the world. And it finally hit me. I'm like, this has been the goal the whole time. The goal has been to provide resources on multiple mediums so that wherever a woman goes, if she likes a podcast, that's here. If she likes a book, that's here. If she wants me to come talk to her in person, that's here. If she wants to do it online on her own or in a group because they can't doesn't work to bring me in, or they want to work on it on their own time and have more time to work through the framework. Here's that here. And I realized that's been the goal. The goal, because people are like, are you trying to be the number one podcast? Are you trying to have the number one book? I mean, all those things are nice. And if that happens because we were able to access and get that information to people, great. But the goal has been to give access to women in all the different mediums that they might look for it in. So no one comes to our site feeling like, oh, I don't connect with that. I mean, one of my best friends is like, I don't listen to podcasts, but I'll read a book. I mean, so it's like that. It was so interesting because I think it's that just, oh yeah, that's why I show up every day. That's what lights me up. So how can I, live and feel and take care of myself in a way that I can continue to do that and show up and honor myself in that way. Yeah.
Well, and I'm going to tell you, Melissa, I think you're amazing. Like when I see the web of things that you're putting together and your consistency in, connecting with other women. And as you said a little bit ago, building them up, supporting them, making kind of this interdependent way of being. It's really very impressive.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah. It's like, I just am so passionate about we can do these things in community together in the ways that feel authentic to us. It's possible, we can do it. It's possible. It's like, Pollyannishly, hoping someday none of this is needed. And we're just automatically inclined that way, but also realistic about this stuff takes time. These things take shifts and there's an accountability that goes with it too. You've got to be willing to invest in yourself in that way as well. But yeah, thank you so much for that. Living out of your own expectations. And this is where I want to bring in, you said something to me earlier. I think it was forest therapy. Is that what you?
Yeah.
Okay. So you live according to what you feel called to, what you feel authentic to. You honored yourself 3 years ago, even though it was painful, in leaving that situation that, it's very difficult to be effective in a therapy environment when you're in an unhealthy environment. I mean, those two just don't work together very well. And so you honored yourself in that way. And you've got these different modalities and you're able to bring your love of nature in with this. So talk to me about this other component. I've never heard of this before, and I'm curious to learn more.
So it's a concept that comes from Japanese forest bathing, where you basically immerse yourself in nature. And I just believe in that so much. There's so much research that shows being in nature helps symptoms of attention deficit and anxiety and depression. And there's phytochemicals that plants actually give off that helps our immune system. It helps us to sleep better. So even having houseplants, can help. So I just felt like, all right, I'm going to get a certification as a forest therapy practitioner. So I did. And that's a newer thing that I've done. And my goal is to use that to facilitate taking people into nature and kind of connecting that to mental health. So I just think, and again, as I said before, that's been around for thousands of years, that idea. And now we're bringing it back around, like we discovered it. But those ancient the ancient people had to be connected to the earth because they didn't have a weather app. They didn't, they had
That's to
be able, or they didn't have a supermarket. Yeah, they just had to know how to live. So it's one of those things that just resonated so much with me. And I thought, I'm actually going to learn more about this because, like I said, I was a master gardener for 15 years. So I would educate people about herbs and growing, all of those things. But this is sort of a different hue, with that. It's just something that I'm really passionate about.
So I love that. And I can attest to that. I tell you what, the ocean, the mountains, forest, and I'm a PNW girl. I grew up in the state of Washington. So I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. I mean, I grew up in trees. And I just thought everybody did. And then I lived around the country and realized not everyone does. But I will tell you, when I need to feel grounded, like a few weeks ago, we went up into the mountains. We went to Sequoia National Park. We walked amongst the sequoias. We hiked through the forest on trails. The couple weekends before that, we went over to the coast to visit my sister-in-law. We did a whale watching tour. We were out on the ocean. Last weekend, we were in Southern California for some work, but we made our way to the ocean because my husband's like, I know this is important to you. Those things are very real. I can tell you, if I am in those spaces, everything settles in my nervous system. It's just undeniable. And so I will get, we'll get to a point and I'll look at my husband. I'm like, and sometimes he will even too, like, we need to get to the mountains. We need to get to the water and feeling a little, I need a little settling. So yeah, so much power in that. So much power. So to continue it on the expectations bet, this is kind of a different way to go. So what are the kind of responses you get when you talk to this? Is this something that's I think it's getting more open. We're starting to see the connections more, but there's still some like, oh, so woo woo. I'm like, well, or just how people lived for thousands of years before technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, so what do people say? I think we've gotten way far away from nature. When I was a kid, again, you didn't have what you have now. So I would be in the woods, and I think
we were outside all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we've gotten a little afraid of nature. Certainly don't always respect it. Yeah. Or it's the enemy. I think we've assigned a lot of different adjectives, I think, to nature, but I just go back to, as humans, we are nature. And so when you actually listen, and I'm not talking, you have to go on a, 20-mile hike.
Sure.
Even if you live in the city, if you look at a patch where there's no building, like an abandoned lot, the number of, in that little square, the number of plants and insects, all of those things, you can find. I mean, look at the sky. Just look at the sky. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a big, it doesn't have to necessarily be the ocean all the time. You can connect to the air and the sky and, that light and dark cycle. Those things, we are literally wired to be connected. And if we're divorced from it or it feels foreign, I think we just need to take some time. And actually, I put together a little mini ebook on sleep and nature. So I can give you that.
We'll include that on our resources page.
That people can download it, because I think it's 15 ways to actually, in little tiny ways, connect to nature. And it's all things I've done. And it's just simple. But even like finding a way to see the moon or following the cycle of the moon. Sure. I think we are, I don't know how old when I realized, the full moon means that it's in the east, because it's just different things where you learn about how where the earth is in relationship to the sun. And so I think we are very just disconnected. And I think taking little steps changes our terrain. Not only, that's not really a pun, but it changes our inner terrain, in how we feel. So, I think trying to get and giving people plants, like all of those things I try to do in little ways.
Yeah. So, I love that. Well, yeah. And it's just like, if you're in the city, get to the park, walk around your neighborhood. If you have a neighborhood, get it. If you have a yard, get in that grass. We have a backyard. We are very fortunate now we have a pool. I love just going on the weekend. I just love being in the water and letting the sun sit on me and just breathing the air and smelling the flowers. We have in the spring here where I live, it's very oranges, trees everywhere. And so the orange blossoms come to life in April, and the scent in the area is like, you walk outside and you can just take a deep breath and breathe it in. It's just magical. And so I know when that's coming. And so I will step out several times during the day, just for a couple of minutes, and just breathe it in, because I know it's only that time of year and I don't want to miss it. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go on a, excursion, on the Appalachians or Pacific Trail or anything. It's just access those little spaces you have already, yeah, it makes all the difference. Thank you so much. So good. Thank you. All right. Accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. We've talked about accepting all the parts and pieces that make up our story. Again, going back to your work, this is something you're helping other people do, but you have your own layers journey. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So the layers, I think that getting down into the deeper layers, and I think we really do that as we get older.
Yeah.
That's where I think we have to accept that part of ourselves as we would in someone else. We're much more likely to be kind or gentle or give grace to someone when they have a bad day or they are curt with us or, different things like that. And when we do those things, we can really internally be like, oh, I was so mean. I can't believe I did that. So I think it's recognizing and looking it in the face. Look at when this happens. When I get hangry, I'm not nice.
Yeah.
Or when somebody's in front of me in the left lane, I drive like an a-hole. Like I'm not nice. And I think we work on those things. Obviously, it's not like, well, that's just the way I am. But I think we need to accept it. And then when we have times where we want something to be a certain way, or it's just who we are, I think having the grace with ourselves that we would have with someone else. Yeah. And I think it's that simple because we are not simple. We're very complex.
Sure.
And, those layers, sometimes one will sort of show itself when we're in a crisis situation.
Yeah.
Or different sides of us come out, or we are a different person depending who we're with. Which is always interesting to me. If you ask everybody in your life, they've all seen a little bit of a different part of us, but it's all us. Yeah. So it starts with grace. I think it starts with just giving yourself the grace that you would give to somebody that you love, like you should love yourself.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. That thing that you're saying to yourself, would you say it to your best friend? Probably not. Then you shouldn't say it to yourself. Yeah, absolutely. Such a key component. And I think that awareness too of it, like really pay attention to that, how you are addressing those things and reacting to yourself, because we do it so subconsciously. We don't always realize it, but then we stop and like, oh, wait a minute here. There's a pattern here. And so how can I make that shift and make sure that I'm aware of that, accountable of that, and that I'm doing something healthier for myself. So yeah, thank you so much for that. So good. All right. In living out F.E.E.L, finding empowerment, embracing layers, talk to me about how that has impacted your relationship with yourself, as well as your relationship with other people.
Yeah. So my relationship with myself, it's kind of what I said. It's just sort of trying to be less judgy, kind of befriending the inner critic, I guess. They're there for a reason.
Sure.
So, I hear you. I know that you are trying to, keep me safe, whatever, fill in the blank. But befriending that. Yeah. But I think in other relationships, sometimes it is ending a relationship. I think sometimes two things. So sometimes it's ending a relationship because you've tried.
Sure.
And, I've had people say, well, I've been friends with them my whole life. It's like, well, yeah, but do you still wear the sweatshirt you wore when you were 12? Things end. And I think sometimes relationships, they do run their course. Yeah. Especially if it's one of those things where you're fighting to maintain it and someone else isn't.
Yeah.
But, I think the other part, when you're in a relationship that you're building, and I'll talk about a marriage or a really close friendship, there are going to be times where the honesty that you need to show, that you have a lot of power when somebody loves you. And I think you can advocate for yourself. Like, this is who I am and this is what I need. And if it's different than what the other person needs, that doesn't mean they're not important. But I think being able to give that message I'll go back to that, wanting to be authentic, that I am a person who, for instance, needs a lot of solitude, a lot of solitude. And my husband he's a little bit different in that. He likes to have a little bit more connection. So being able to really respect my need, respect his need, and how do you navigate that? I think that's where those layers come in, that you can't deny, well, I need this, but it might be hard for my partner to accommodate that.
Yeah.
Well, don't you do things that are hard to accommodate too? I think it's recognizing you're doing hard things.
Yeah.
The other person's doing hard things. And you can't not say what you need just because you're worried.
Yeah.
So, I think we can say anything, but it's how we say it. I think it's being gentle with that. So advocate for yourself. It's standing in your space, right? It's what we talked about, standing in mountain pose, but you're not standing there with a sword. You're standing there really using your voice to say, here's what I need. And what does that feel like to you? Like, learning how to communicate is key to really everything.
Yeah, because there's so many ways to say things, but that communicate, I love that. Stand strong, but not with the sword. We can be direct and kind. And I think sometimes we think direct has to be abrupt and terse, and it doesn't have to be. It can just be, you don't beat around the bush, but you have your tone of voice and you're talking in I statements. And, so really thinking about how you say that is going to have everything to do. That person feels like, oh yeah, they really are genuinely concerned about the impact on me while speaking up for themselves. Both things can be true. Then that opens the door. Okay, how are we going to navigate this then? How are we going to work through this? That's the key in relationships. And sitting there and stewing about it or not doing it because you're afraid of the reaction and then being irritated with them about the thing that you won't communicate. It's like, that's a key component too. Like, if you keep hearing something from somebody, like they'll go to a girlfriend or a best friend, like, I'm like, have you talked to them about that? Well, no, I'm like, well, you have to make a choice in being a part of the solution here. And if you're not, then you might be like, then I'm not really interested in hearing more about that if it's just going to be continuing down this road. So, I think about those kinds of things too. But yeah, communication, you can be direct and kind at the same time, and everybody's better off when you do that. So yeah, thank you so much for that. So good. All right. We are down to the rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Gardening, for sure. Writing, love writing, and creating, reading, and new experiences.
I love
those
that.
5.
So fun. All right. And 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Oh boy. Well, there's probably going to be a theme here. Calmer, more grounded, peacefuler. That's not a word, but we'll pretend that's a word. Peacefuler, accomplished and organized. And it's funny. I think those things have a lot to do with where I am in building my business, because right now it feels a little like an octopus that is like all the tentacles are like waving all around. Yes. So I think my goal for 6 months is this is the perfect time to ask me that question, because normally I do feel those things. I feel grounded. But right now it's like, I want to feel calmer and more grounded, but also that sense of accomplishment and a little bit more organization. So that's where my head's at right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Yeah. And I love the truth about that. And I think that the reason I ask those questions is we can't put things it's very difficult to put something in action if we don't name it. And we're like, oh, okay. Well, if I'm aware of that now, what are the things I can put into play to make that happen, to make that possible for me? So I love that. So good. I'll be excited to check in with you in 6 months and see how it's going.
Yes.
All right. All right. Mary, let people know where they can find you, follow you, all those good things.
Okay. So my website is maryrothwell.net. And that's a jumping off point for a lot of things. So if you're interested in my free download of the 15 ways to connect to nature for better sleep and more well-being, that's maryrothwell.net Sleep and Nature, all one word, Sleep and Nature. If you want to listen to No Shrinking Violets, my podcast, you can find that on, of course, Apple, Spotify, a lot of different places, or you can go to maryrothwell.net/podcast.
Okay.
And my Restored Sleep course for women in midlife, maryrothwell.net/restored.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. That will all be on our website, on our resources page at embracinglayers.com. So you all can access it there. Mary, thanks so much for your time today. I'm so glad we've been able to connect, that we're able to be in this space together. It matters. And I look forward to doing continued collaborations with you as we work to really help women know their value, know their voice, feel safe and free to speak up and stand up for themselves. So thanks so much for being a partner in this.
Yes. And thanks for the work you do.
Thank you so much. All right,
Thank you,
everybody. You bet. Listen, access those resources, everybody that's listening, and take advantage of these things that are available to you. Know that you're worth it. And the next time you catch yourself settling for something without, because you don't want to make somebody else uncomfortable, step back. Make sure you're not abandoning yourself, because you are worthy of not abandoning yourself. So that's your takeaway for this week as we wrap up this podcast episode today. Thanks again, Mary, for being with me. You all take good care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time here on the F.E.E.L podcast on the Embracing Layers Network. I got to remember what I am. All right. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Melissa.
Hello, and thank you so much for being with us today on this episode of the F.E.E.L podcast. If you would like more information on how you can apply these talking points that I share with our guests in each episode to your own life, really utilize this F.E.E.L framework, go to embracinglayers.com, fill out our contact form, and let's set up a free 30-minute consultation to talk about how you can start living your most authentic, organic, healthy, F.E.E.L-fueled life. Thanks again for being with us today. We'll be back to you soon with another episode here on the F.E.E.L podcast.